Hello, BookTube. I was inventorying some of the books that I got this week. It's a Saturday, so all the book acquiring is now over for the week. So it's time to assess everything, mark everything, notate everything. And I got to a batch of books that's been sitting here that I got at secondhand shops, charity shops, or the Rattle or whatnot. And when I was going through them, I thought, wait a minute. Did you talk about these with your lame-ass BookTube friends? Because if you didn't, there'll be heck to pay. And I realized that I did not. So I wanted to show them to you now before they go on the shelves. And the first one is a great find that I found at the Brattle. I was so happy. It's this. It's Philip Magnus's biography of King Edward VII. Great big thing that was, for years, I had it as a Penguin Classic mass market, an orange-spined mass market, and it was a ritual. I would read it, and the orange-spined mass market would dry up and pop apart, and then I would discard it, and then I would get another one, and then when I read that one, it would dry up and pop apart. I kept waiting, hoping that I would find a hardcover. That's been probably 15 years. So I was very happy to find this. It is so good. Oh, it is so good. It is so beautifully written. I have a soft spot for King Edward VII. I don't know why. So I have every biography, including the original one, the 2-volume one that was done, right when the corpse was hardly cold. And this is my favorite one. It's because it's not only magisterial, but it's beautifully written. So in the biography shelf out there are many, as you may remember, there are many, many biographies of royalty. And in every case, almost every monarch has had multiple biographies. And so in almost every case of every monarch, I am able to assess, I have different volumes for different things. One is chatty, and I like that. One is authorized, and I have a sweet spot for that. And in every case, whether it's, Elizabeth I or King Stephen or King John or anybody, there's always one that's the best. There's always one that, apart from all other attributes, is just the best biography of the subject, and this is it for King Edward VII. I often think that I might like to do a book about the Edwards. Thomas Costain did a famous history book called The Three Edwards, but that was just one family group. When I'd like to analyze the fate of the Edwards just in general. What can we say? It's random chance, of course. The name is just random chance. But what can we say about them if we draw their reigns together? Some more fortunate than others. It is, in my opinion, in English history, the least fortunate royal name, with lots of far more. You've got a great king, Edward III, but you also got Edward II, who was a profligate and wasteful king and died ignominiously. You've got Edward VI, who was Henry VIII's longed-for male heir and died young and horribly, in horrible pain. And you've got the next Edward, Edward VIII, who didn't even stay on the throne. He abdicated. and of course, Edward VII himself only reigned for 10 years. And almost didn't reign at all. He almost died before he could take the throne of routine appendicitis that at the time there was nothing routine about it at the time. I often think that might be fun, just to write a book on the Edwards and then maybe follow it up with the Richards or something like that. But in the meantime, since that book's never going to get written, I was very happy to find this. And then a novel by H.F. Saint called The Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Some of you who know me in real life, I guess all of you know me in real life now, don't you? But some of you have known me for years, long before BookTube, might have received a copy of this book from me, because whenever I find it, I give it away to people because it's so good. It's so enjoyable. It's 30-something corporate schmuck Nick Halloway, who's pleasing a woman, and so is joining her on a tour of a military corporation institute, and there's an explosion of highly classified technology. And when he wakes up, he's uninjured, but he's invisible. And it is an absolutely perfect update to H.G. Wells' novel, which some of you might know. I'm not a big fan of H.G. Wells' Invisible Man, mainly because of the main character, the Invisible Man, who's the biggest putz in the world. I often think about that novel, how much more effective and interesting it would be if the accident had happened to someone else. Instead, we get a guy who you could give him a death ray and he'd still be a disaster to himself. And this is a perfect postscript to that, because Nick Holloway turns out to be far more inventive and resourceful than he himself thinks. Imagine it. He's in the middle of New Jersey. He lives on the Upper East Side. How do you get from the middle of New Jersey to the Upper East Side if you're invisible? How do you do that? How do you come into your car? How do you get through a toll booth when you have to hand $2 in tolls to the toll collector? How do you get on the subway? How do you get on the buses? How do you get into your apartment? It's just wonderful. All those kinds of questions are addressed. What do you actually do? What challenges do you face if you're invisible and you don't want to go public? Because he immediately assumes that the military spooks that run the lab will, once they start picking up the pieces from the damage, will start to want to know where everybody is, and will realize that one of the people who was caught in the explosion is unaccounted for, and track him down. And of course, in the course of the book, they do. So it's not just a meditation on being invisible, it's also a thriller. But the meditation parts on being invisible are my favorite parts. Like, there's a part he finally does make it to his apartment, and he's relieved, he's starving, and he's thirsty, and he has some food. There's some mushu pork in the refrigerator that isn't quite bad enough to deter him because he's starving. So he eats it, and then horrifyingly realizes that although he and his clothing are invisible, the food is not. That's what have we got here? When I looked down at myself, I saw that I had not spilled anything at all. What I had done was to pour into my invisible esophagus a hideously visible brown and yellow mixture of mushu pork, coffee, ice cream, and beer. The sludgy concoction was piling up in my stomach, of whose exact location I had never, until this moment, really been quite aware. I was becoming a sack of vomit and fecal matter. I suppose, on reflection, that is what I'd always been, but nature had not formally imposed this aspect of the human condition quite so vividly upon me. The nasty facts had been discreetly enveloped in opaque flesh. Now I was to be a transparent sack of vomit and fecal matter. I cannot begin to tell you how distasteful it was. And it turns out that isn't true. It turns out the food, whatever's going on in his body, needs time. Once the food is metabolized, it becomes invisible. So he doesn't need to worry about it, but that moment is great. And I found this trade paperback, and I don't have a copy because every time I have it, I give it away. So I was happy to get it, and I'm going to reread it, even though it's a pure indulgence. And also, I might mention, I'll make a video. I'm going to make a video on this theme because I feel I owe it to those of you who have expressed mild outrage at my opinion. It's well known on this subject that on this channel, that I consider book adaptations to movies to be almost universally better than the book they adapt. However, there is a small list of movie adaptations that are worse than their original book, much worse. And this is one of them. This was actually adapted into a movie starring Chevy Chase, and it was awful, almost unwatchable. And there are a handful of others like that. So I'm going to make a video about the book was better. But in the meantime, I was very happy to find this. And then there was an oddity that I've never seen before. Prague, My Love. I've mentioned on this channel that I very much liked my time in Prague. And this is a heavily illustrated novel / guidebook, where the conceit of the novel is that a tourist comes to Prague and meets a tour guide, and they just go around Prague. And it's a very creaky conceit, because the tour guide turns out to know everything in every detail, which tour guides don't. They're as often wrong as right. You listen to enough of them on Boston's Freedom Trail, when you know anything about Boston history, you'll know that for a fact. But you open on any page, you get an illustration. But you get, who were the Crusaders? Everyone. They come from all over Europe, German, French, Italian, Hungarian, Austrians, Englishmen. Some come to fight heresy, others were mercenaries out for plunder. And it goes on like that I read 200 pages of it in the bookstore, and I thought, oh my God, I would fire this guy. But I want to read the rest of it and see it's an oddity as a Prague book. And then the next one is going to look familiar to you. It looked familiar to me. It took me a moment to place it. It's The Greatest Knight by Thomas Asbridge. And it is a biography of William Marshal, who was the right-hand man and swordsmaster for King Henry II. And you might think, well, okay, so he was the muscle for King Henry II. Why does he deserve a biography, much less the sobriquet The Greatest Knight? And the reason why is because once Henry II died, he held his position under both Richard the Lionheart and King John, Henry's sons, who not only hated Henry but hated each other. The fact that the whole family considered him indispensable and that he could declare his loyalty to each one in turn without alienating the others really is remarkable, even in the ethically flexible era of the feudal relationship. You look at this, it might look familiar to you because it's... what are we doing here? We just recently saw this with God's Wolf. This is the same cover design. It's just very different people. This is Reynald de Chatillon, and this is William Marshal. And both of them were barrel-chested, acne-scarred 25-year-olds, but one was honorable and the other wasn't. And if they had fought, it wouldn't have been pretty. I feel certain that William Marshal would have won. And I got this book. I requested it for Open Letters and got it. I think it's 5 years old, 4 years old, something like that. And I don't remember anything about it. I don't think I ever reviewed it. I don't think I ever read it. I confess before this video, I did not check Open Letters to see if I reviewed it. I don't think I did. And Open Letters has been experiencing rather annoying technical difficulties. If any of you have actually tried to go there and it hasn't loaded, we're well aware of the problem. But I don't think I did. I don't think I ever got it. And I certainly wasn't holding books up for the camera then, but I was very happy to find it because it sheds a light on the Plantagenet rule. It's a biography that sheds light on the Plantagenet rule without being a biography of a Plantagenet, which is fascinating. And then the last thing I got that I was enjoying this time around is a duplicate. It was like 50 cents, so I got it. It's Doris Kearns Goodwin, The Bully Pulpit, which is not only a gigantic, beautifully written, wonderfully researched history of the 1912 presidential campaign, Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson and William Howard Taft, the epic contest for the presidency that riveted the whole world. What is going on here? This is not a normal election. And had a personal element because Taft and Roosevelt had been friends, best friends, and now very publicly weren't, and that was it added the penny dreadful melodrama to the whole thing. It's not only a great story of that, which would have been a great idea on its own, and I would have read Doris Kearns Goodwin on that. But she took it one step further, and it's a predictable step because she's hip deep with the world of journalism. And she made it also a story about the people who reported on the campaign. These people, including Ida Tarbell. And it's that part of the book ends up being, by all accounts, amazingly, every bit as fascinating as the political stuff. So I was very happy to find a nice, big, heavy hardcover. Now you notice it's modeled with somebody spilled tea on it or something like that. And my plan when I got it, since it was 50 cents and I didn't have to carry it, was I have another copy out in the other room that is, as far as I remember, in perfect condition. And this one is not. So my plan was to just pluck that one off the shelf, put this one on, and then have a copy up for grabs to give to one of you. So if there's one of you out there that finds this a particularly fascinating subject, just let me know, and I'll mail you off the clean copy rather than this one. I don't care what it looks like, and I'm glad to give this a home where it'll be loved. And there you go. That is. I guess I now do this all the time. It's just pile them up horizontally. I don't know why, but that is a batch of used books that I didn't want to put in the inventory without showing them to you. So there's the Bully Pulpit, there's The Greatest Night, there's Prague, My Love. I'm wondering if Prague, My Love means that the tour guide and the tourist fall in love at the end of the book, or if just that they both fall in love with Prague. I have no idea. I don't think I'll be reporting back either. Memoirs of Invisible Man by H.F. Saint, a winner of a novel. If you see it in a thrift shop, you will love it. And King Edward VII, the best biography ever of King Edward VII. So much more refreshing and intelligent and meaningful than all of the books about him that just resort to titillation, Edward the Caresser, all that sort of thing. Give me a book that takes him seriously but doesn't adulate, and I'm all yours. So there you have it. That was just a quickie used book haul, and I'll see you soon, book 2. Thank you.